What happens when a calm, smiling celebrity walks onto a late-night stage, but carries a story that quietly shattered his entire life? The lights glow warm across the studio. The audience is laughing, clapping, expecting jokes, something light, something easy. But there's a tension, subtle, almost invisible, hanging in the air like a secret waiting to be exposed. Before we go any further, if you love deep, emotional storytelling that reveals the truth behind fame, hit that subscribe button right now and like this video. And don't stay silent, drop a comment. Because tonight's story, it's not just entertainment, it's something real. The band fades out. Jimmy leans forward, flashing that familiar smile. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sterling K. Brown. The applause erupts. Loud, excited, respectful. Sterling walks in, dressed casually, almost too casually. A sweatsuit, not the polished red carpet look people expect from a man of his stature. He smiles, waves, shakes Jimmy's hand, sits down. But if you look closely, really closely, there's something behind that smile. Something heavier. Jimmy notices it too, but he plays it cool. So, I gotta ask, Jimmy begins, glancing at the outfit with a grin. You show up in a sweatsuit at the Critics' Choice Awards? That's confidence or rebellion. The audience chuckles. Sterling laughs softly. Man, it's comfort. Sometimes you just gotta be comfortable in your own skin. Simple answer. Too simple. There's a pause. Jimmy leans back slightly, studying him. You've been through a lot recently, haven't you? The room shifts. The laughter fades just a little. Sterling's smile tightens. Yeah, he says quietly. Yeah, I have. And just like that, the tone changes. The audience feels it. This isn't just another interview anymore. Jimmy senses it too, his voice softening. You mentioned there was a turning point in your life. Something that changed everything. Sterling exhales slowly. You can almost hear the weight of years in that breath. It wasn't fame, he says. It wasn't success. It wasn't any award. He pauses. The silence grows louder. It was a fight. A ripple moves through the audience. Confusion. Curiosity. Jimmy raises an eyebrow. A fight. Sterling nods. High school. I was young, angry, trying to prove something I didn't even understand. His voice lowers, more introspective now. There's this moment. Right before everything goes wrong where you can still stop it. You can walk away. You can choose differently. The camera cuts to audience faces. Focused, drawn in. I didn't walk away. Silence. Sterling's eyes drift somewhere distant, like he's no longer in the studio, but back there, reliving it. I swung first. A few people shift in their seat. Jimmy leans forward now, fully invested. What happened after that? Sterling lets out a small, almost bitter laugh. What happened was everything changed. He looks down at his hands. You think it's just one moment, one mistake. But it's not. It's a ripple. It spreads into who you become, how people see you, how you see yourself. The room is completely still now. No laughter. No movement. Just listening. Sterling looks back up, and for the first time, his eyes glisten. I lost something that day, he says. Not physically, but inside. Jimmy doesn't interrupt. He knows this isn't a moment to control, it's a moment to witness. Sterling continues, voice heavier now. I carried that anger for years. Even when things started going right, even when I was succeeding, it was still there. Quiet, but powerful. He pauses again. And then, life has a way of bringing it back to you. Jimmy tilts his head slightly. What do you mean? Sterling smiles faintly, but there's pain in it. My son. The audience softens instantly. A different energy now, more emotional, more human. He came home one day with this drawing, Sterling says. First grade. Just a simple drawing. He gestures with his hands. But in that drawing, I saw something. He pauses. I saw me. The audience leans in. Jimmy whispers, what did it show? Sterling swallows. It showed anger. A quiet gasp from somewhere in the crowd. And that's when it hit me, everything I thought I buried, everything I thought I controlled, it was still there. His voice cracks slightly. And now, it wasn't just mine anymore. The weight of that sentence lands hard. Jimmy sits back, letting it breathe. Sterling wipes his hands together, as if trying to steady himself. You spend your whole life thinking you've moved on, he says. But sometimes the truth comes back through the people you love most. The audience is silent, completely locked in. Jimmy finally speaks softly. So what did you do? Sterling looks up, and for a moment, the pain shifts into something else. Determination. I decided. That was the moment I change. He leans forward slightly. Not for me. A beat. For him. The audience exhales collectively, like they've been holding their breath this entire time. Jimmy nods slowly. That's powerful, man. Sterling smiles again, but this time it feels different. More real. More earned. But even in that moment, there's a sense that this story isn't finished. That something deeper is still coming. The lights feel dimmer now. The air heavier. And somewhere in the audience you can almost feel it. This isn't just a story about a past mistake. It's about something bigger. Something unresolved. And as Sterling leans back in his chair, the faintest shadow crosses his face. As if the hardest part of the story hasn't even been told yet. The studio doesn't erupt into applause this time. Instead it breathes. Slow. Heavy. Uncertain. You can feel it in the way people shift in their seats, in the way even the cameras seem to linger just a second longer than usual. Something has changed. The interview isn't moving forward anymore, it's sinking deeper. Jimmy studies Sterling, his voice quieter now, more careful. That moment with your son, it sounds like it hit harder than anything before it. Sterling nods slowly, his fingers interlocked, thumbs pressing against each other like he's grounding himself. It did, he says. Because for the first time, I wasn't just looking at my past. He pauses. I was looking at my future. The words hang there, heavy with meaning. The audience leans in again, completely silent now. Sterling exhales, then lets out a small, almost disbelieving laugh. You know, we like to think we can control what parts of us the world sees. Especially in this industry. You build this image, this version of yourself that's polished, composed. He glances around the studio. Safe. Jimmy nods. That's what people expect, right? Exactly, Sterling says. But the truth, he shakes his head slightly. The truth doesn't care about your image. A ripple of agreement moves through the crowd. It shows up anyway. There's a pause. Sterling's expression shifts again, less reflective, more intense. That drawing, it wasn't just a wake-up call. It was a mirror. And I didn't like what I saw. Jimmy leans forward slightly. What did you see? Sterling's jaw tightens. I saw a version of myself that I thought I had outgrown, he says. But more than that, I saw what I could become if I didn't change. The tension rises again. The audience feels it. This isn't just about anger, Sterling continues. It's about patterns. The things we inherit, the things we absorb, the things we pass down without even realizing it. He looks out toward the audience now, his voice gaining strength. My father, he carried his own struggles, and I saw that growing up. I didn't understand it at the time. I just felt it. He taps his chest lightly. And then, one day, I realized I was carrying the same thing. Jimmy's voice is almost a whisper. That's a hard realization. Sterling nods. It is. Because you don't want to believe it. You want to think you're different. Better, even. He shakes his head. But the truth doesn't work like that. The room is still. No one dares interrupt. Sterling leans back slightly, eyes drifting again, not lost this time, but searching. There was another moment, he says slowly. After the drawing. A few days later. Jimmy doesn't speak. He just listens. My son, he got upset about something small. really small. And I could feel it, rising up inside me. Sterling's hands tighten again. That same heat. That same instinct. The audience holds its breath. And for a split second, he says, voice dropping, I almost reacted the same way I used to. A few people visibly tense. Jimmy's eyes narrow slightly. But you didn't? Sterling looks at him. No, he says firmly. I didn't. A quiet wave of relief moves through the room. But it scared me, Sterling adds. The relief fades into something deeper. Because I realized it's always there. Waiting. It doesn't disappear just because you want it to. He pauses, letting that sink in. You have to choose every single time not to become that person. The weight of discipline, of constant effort. Jimmy nods slowly. That's a battle most people don't talk about. Sterling lets out a breath. Because it's not pretty. It's not something you can package into a highlight reel. He gestures lightly. Nobody posts about the moments where they almost lost control, but didn't. A few quiet chuckles, nervous knowing. Because when the world sees you a certain way, you start to believe that's who you have to be. Even when you're struggling behind the scenes. Omit anymore. The room grows even quieter. And I had to admit something I didn't want to admit, he adds. Jimmy leans in, sensing the gravity. What was that? Sterling looks down for a moment. Then back up. That I was still carrying pain I never dealt with. A soft murmur moves through the audience. And that pain, he continues, it was shaping how I showed up in my own home. The words hit differently now. More personal. More real. Jimmy exhales slowly. That takes courage to say. Sterling shrugs slightly. It takes necessity. Because if I didn't face it, I was going to pass it on. The audience is completely still again. You can almost feel the collective reflection happening in real time. Sterling leans back, his posture loosening just a bit. But here's the thing, he says. Change doesn't happen overnight. He smiles faintly. It's messy. It's uncomfortable. And sometimes it feels like you're not making progress at all. Jimmy nods. But you keep going. Yeah, Sterling says. You keep going. A brief silence. Then Jimmy glances at him, a slight smile returning. You know, people came here tonight expecting stories about awards, Hollywood, success. A few light laughs. But this, he gestures towards Sterling, this is something else. Sterling chuckles softly. Yeah. I didn't plan on going this deep. Jimmy smirks. I'm glad you did. The audience applauds, soft, genuine. But even as the applause fades, there's still a lingering tension. Because something feels unfinished. Sterling shifts slightly in his seat, as if he knows it too. Jimmy notices. There's more, isn't there? He asks quietly. Sterling hesitates. Just for a second. Then he nods. Yeah, he says. His expression changes again, this time more serious than before. Because everything I told you so far, that was just the beginning. The audience freezes. Jimmy leans forward, eyes locked in. What happened next? Sterling takes a deep breath. And for the first time since the interview began, there's a flicker of something new in his eyes. Not just pain. Not just reflection. But something heavier. Something that suggests the story is about to take a turn no one in the room is ready for. When I finally started confronting it, he says slowly, something unexpected happened. A pause. The tension tightens. It didn't just affect me. Another pause. It changed everything around me. The air feels thick now. Unpredictable. And as Sterling looks out into the audience again, there's a quiet understanding spreading across the room. The hardest part of his story is only just beginning. The silence doesn't break this time. It deepens. You can feel it pressing in from every corner of the studio, wrapping around every person in the audience like a tightening grip. Even the faint hum of the lights feels louder now. Nobody moves. Nobody coughs. Nobody dares interrupt what's unfolding. Sterling leans forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped together. His voice, when it comes, is lower, steadier, but carrying something heavier than before. When I say it changed everything, he begins, I don't mean just inside me. He lifts his head slowly. I mean my home, my marriage, the way my kids saw me. A ripple of unease spreads through the audience. Jimmy's posture shifts, no longer host, no longer entertainer. Just a man listening carefully. That sounds bigger than just personal growth. Sterling nods once. It was, he says. Because when you start pulling at something buried that deep, you don't just uncover truth. He pauses. You uncover damage. The word lands hard. Somewhere in the audience, someone exhales sharply. Sterling continues, his voice steady but weighted. I started opening up to my wife. Really opening up. Not the polished version, not the I'm working on myself version. He shakes his head slightly. The real version. Jimmy's eyes narrow slightly. How did she take it? Sterling lets out a slow breath. At first, she listened. A small, almost grateful smile crosses his face. She always listens. The audience softens for a moment. But then, he adds, the smile fading, she started asking questions. Jimmy tilts his head. What kind of questions? Sterling looks down briefly, then back up. Questions I didn't want to answer. The tension creeps back in. Like, how long have you been feeling this way, he says. Or why didn't you tell me sooner? He pauses. And the hardest one. The room leans in without realizing it. How has this affected us? Silence. Jimmy doesn't move. Sterling's jaw tightens slightly. That's the one that hit me. He taps his chest again. Because I didn't have a clean answer. A murmur ripples through the audience. I wanted to say, it hasn't. He lets out a quiet, almost hollow laugh. I wanted to protect her from that truth. He looks out at the crowd now, eyes sharp. But that wouldn't have been honest. Jimmy speaks softly. So what did you say? Sterling hesitates. For just a moment. It looks like he might not answer. Then, I told her it had. A collective stillness falls. And not in obvious ways, he continues quickly. Not like shouting matches every day or things people can easily point to. He shakes his head. It was quieter than that. His voice lowers. It was in the moments I pulled away when I should have leaned in. The audience absorbs every word. Jimmy's voice drops. Did it ever feel like things might fall apart? Sterling's eyes flicker. For a brief second, the mask slips completely. Yeah, he says quietly. No hesitation. No cushioning. Just truth. A few people in the audience visibly tense. Jimmy doesn't interrupt. He knows this is the moment. Sterling continues, his voice slightly tighter now. There were nights where the house felt different. He glances down, as if replaying those moments. Not loud. Not explosive. He looks back up. Just distant. That word echoes. Distant. The audience feels it. Like we were both standing in the same space, he says, but trying to figure out who the other person had become. Jimmy swallows subtly. That's heavy. Sterling nods. It is. Because you realize love isn't just about staying. He pauses. It's about growing. And growth. Another beat. Growth can be uncomfortable. The tension is almost unbearable now. Nobody is thinking about jokes anymore. Nobody is thinking about entertainment. This is something else entirely. Jimmy shifts slightly, his voice careful again. So what kept you grounded through that? Sterling's expression softens just a little. My kids. A gentle shift in energy. They don't care about your image, he says. They don't care about your success. A faint smile. They care about how you show up. The audience nods, some quietly murmuring agreement. And I knew, no matter how uncomfortable things got, I couldn't stop showing up. He leans forward again, intensity returning. Even when it was messy. Even when it was uncertain. Jimmy watches him closely. And your wife? Sterling takes a breath. She stayed. A small wave of relief passes through the audience. But staying, he adds, doesn't mean ignoring the truth. The relief tightens again into tension. It means facing it. Together. He pauses. And that's not easy. Jimmy nods. No, it's not. Sterling looks out at the audience again, his voice steady, grounded. There's this idea that once you decide to change, everything gets better. He shakes his head slowly. That's not how it works. The room is silent. Sometimes, things get harder first. The words land like a quiet warning. Because you're no longer hiding. A deep stillness settles over the studio. And when you stop hiding, he says, everything comes into the light. Jimmy leans back slightly, absorbing it all. So where are you now? He asks. Sterling doesn't answer immediately. He takes a moment, breathes. Then, I'm in the middle of it. Not a perfect ending. Not a resolved story. Just reality. The audience sits with that. Jimmy nods slowly. That might be the most honest answer you could give. Sterling smiles faintly. It's the only one I've got. A soft ripple of applause begins. Tentative, respectful, emotional. But even as the clapping builds, there's still something lingering. Something unresolved. Because this story, it hasn't reached its breaking point yet. Sterling shifts slightly in his seat, glancing briefly toward Jimmy, then back out at the audience. And there's one more thing, he says. The applause fades instantly. The tension snaps back. Jimmy leans forward again, almost instinctively. What is it? Sterling's expression darkens, just enough to signal what's coming next won't be easy. It wasn't just my family that started reacting to the change. A pause. The room tightens. It was everything around me. Another pause. My work. My reputation. The way people saw me. He exhales slowly. And that's when things got complicated. The air feels different now. Sharper. Unpredictable. And as the audience sits frozen once again, one thought spreads silently through the room. Whatever comes next might be the most explosive part of his story yet. The air feels different now. Heavier. Sharper. Like something invisible has shifted, and everyone in the room can feel it, but no one can quite name it yet. Sterling doesn't smile this time. He sits still, eyes forward, voice quieter, but carrying a weight that pulls the entire room in with him. When things started changing in my personal life, he says slowly, I thought I could keep it separate from everything else. A faint, almost ironic breath escapes him. I was wrong. Jimmy leans forward, his expression no longer curious, but cautious. What happened? Sterling's fingers tighten together again. At first it was subtle, he says. Small things. People noticing I was different. He glances briefly toward the audience. Not in a bad way. Just different. A pause. Less guarded. More honest. Jimmy nods. That sounds like a good thing. Sterling tilts his head slightly. It is in real life. A beat. But in this world? He gestures around the studio. It makes people uncomfortable. A ripple moves through the audience, quiet recognition. Because people don't just connect to you, he continues. They connect to the version of you they understand. His voice sharpens just slightly. And when that version changes, they don't always know what to do with it. Jimmy leans back slowly. So you started feeling that shift? Sterling nods. Yeah. Conversations changed. Interactions changed. He pauses. Even opportunities. The audience reacts, soft murmurs, a shift of energy. Jimmy raises an eyebrow. You think your honesty affected your work? Sterling doesn't hesitate. I know it did. The words land clean, direct. No one came out and said it, he adds. That's not how it works. A faint, knowing smile crosses his face. But you feel it. The hesitation. The second-guessing. He leans forward slightly. The unspoken question. Is he still the same person we built our expectations around? The room is completely still again. And the truth is, Sterling says, voice steady, no. A beat. I'm not. The tension rises, different now. Not emotional. Consequential. Jimmy watches him carefully. That's a risk, though. Sterling nods. It is. He exhales slowly. But at some point, you have to decide what costs more. A pause. Losing opportunities. Another pause. Or losing yourself. The audience reacts, this time with a deeper murmur, something closer to respect. Sterling leans back, shoulders slightly more relaxed now. I chose myself. A soft wave of applause begins, but it fades quickly as he continues. And not everyone liked that choice. The tension snaps back instantly. Jimmy tilts his head. Did it get public? Sterling hesitates. For the first time in a while, there's a flicker of uncertainty. Not immediately, he says. But we live in a time where nothing stays private for long. The audience knows exactly what that means. He continues. Clips started circulating. Interviews being analyzed. People picking apart every word, every expression. He shakes his head slowly, trying to figure out what changed. Jimmy exhales. And did they? Sterling gives a faint smile. They created their own answers. A few quiet laughs, uneasy knowing. Some people said I was going through something, he continues. Others thought I was trying to reinvent myself. He pauses. And some. His expression tightens slightly. Some thought I had lost control. The audience shifts, tension rising again. Jimmy leans forward. How did that feel? Sterling looks straight ahead. Strange, he says. Because for the first time in my life. A beat. He glances down briefly. Sterling lets out a quiet breath. It is. But it forces you to be real. He leans forward again, intensity returning. Because you can't live in two different truths forever. The room is silent. You either keep performing, he says, or you start living honestly. A beat. I chose honesty. The audience doesn't clap this time. They're too absorbed. Sterling looks out across the room, eyes steady. And here's what happened next. The tension rises one last time. The noise didn't stop. A pause. But something else changed. Jimmy leans in. What? Sterling's expression softens. Just slightly. I stopped listening to it. The energy shift. Not explosive. Not dramatic. But powerful. Not because it disappeared, he adds. But because I finally understood something. He pauses. The world will always have a version of you. A beat. But only you decide which one is real. The audience exhales, some nodding, some visibly emotional. Jimmy smiles faintly. That's a hard lesson. Sterling nods. It is. A brief silence settles over the studio. Then, applause. Real applause this time. Not loud. Not chaotic. But deep. Respectful. Earned. The camera pans across faces. Some thoughtful, some emotional, some still processing everything they just heard. Jimmy turns back to Sterling. I think a lot of people are going to hear this and see themselves in it. Sterling smiles softly. I hope so. The applause slowly fades. But outside this room, the story doesn't end. Because within hours, clips begin to spread. Social media lights up. Debates spark. Was this bravery? Was it vulnerability? Or was it something else entirely? Comment sections explode with opinions. Some people praise him for his honesty. Others question the timing. Some admire the change. Others resist it. And just like that, the private journey becomes a public conversation. A headline. A moment dissected, shared, debated across the world. Back in the studio, though, none of that noise matters. Not right now. Right now, it's just a man who chose to face himself. And a room full of people who witnessed it. Sterling leans back in his chair, quieter now, lighter, somehow. Jimmy nods toward him, a look of respect that doesn't need words. The lights begin to dim slightly as the segment nears its end. But the feeling lingers, because this wasn't just an interview. It was a confrontation, not between two people, but between who someone was, and who they chose to become. And now, that story belongs to everyone watching. So what do you think? Was this the moment everything changed for him? Or just the beginning of something even bigger? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. I want to hear your perspective. And if you want more stories that go beyond the surface, more moments that reveal the truth behind the headlines, make sure you subscribe to The Truth Narrator. Because the next story? It might be even more explosive than this one.